life confronts us with endless and enduring questions in every generation. Some questions are very trivial. Example, what was God doing before He created the world? And so one Christian theologian answered jokingly, God was preparing hell for those who ask such questions. On the other hand, there are also serious questions. Example, does God exist? Who is God? What is life all about? Perhaps the mother of all questions is, does life have meaning? If I were to ask all of you this question, does life have meaning? I am very sure, 100%, all of you would say yes. Correct? Give yourselves a round of applause. Come on. You are right. When you look at the Bible, especially the New Testament, all you need to do is to quote John chapter 10, verse 10. I came that you might have life and live life more abundantly or to the fullest. But, hold on, chotomate. As far as Ecclesiastes is concerned, we are all wrong. Remember what I told you? The book of Ecclesiastes is about this teacher called Koheleth, trying to find meaning in life. And at the end of his search, he came to a stunning conclusion. Life under the sun is Havel, or the word Havel means meaningless, uselessness. So this morning, what I want to do is to examine the reasons why this author Koheleth tells us life is meaningless. And then we will explore his recommendation. How do you live in a world that is meaningless? Let's have the text for today. Look with me at the text. First, Ecclesiastes 1 verse 2. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Now that is chapter 1 verse 2. And guess what? He concludes his writing, 12 verse 8, saying, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. Or another translation, the Common English Bible, perfectly pointless, says the teacher. Perfectly pointless. Everything is pointless. Perfectly pointless, says the teacher. Everything is pointless. Observe two things. He begins with meaningless of meaningless, and he ends with meaningless of meaningless. Therefore, this is very important to him. It's just like a frame. And then second thing, the word, as I said, the key word, one of the key words is the word Havel, which is meaningless, occurs 29 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. Let's go to the next slide. The Hebrew text. Let me read to you once again in order that you can hear the sound. Okay, you can follow the transliteration. Havel Havalim Amar Kohelet. Havel Havalim Hakol Havel. 12 verse 8. Havel Havalim Amar Ha Kohelet Hakol Havel. So, what are the reasons Kohelet gives that makes him say life is pointless? Now this morning I'm going to take all the reasons he gives and package them, all right, into three categories so as to help you to remember and also to remind you. First category, life is pointless. Why? According to Koheleth, life is pointless because it is profitless. As far as he's concerned, there is no profit. Now, interestingly, the word he uses is a very important word. The word is yitron, and is translated as advantage, gain, surplus, no extra. Is an economic term. And so what he's saying, all right, life is profitless, so much so that after chapter 1, verse 2, he says meaningless or meaningless. Guess what he says in verse 3? What all your labor, what do you gain? What do you gain? All right, so that is his first thing. Second thing, why is life meaningless? Because there is no eternal memory of the fools and the wise. The fools die, they are forgotten. The wise die, they are forgotten. Number 3, there is no distinction between animals and humans. Correct? Why? Because animals die, humans also die. 4th, death awaits. Death destroys everything. You can work very hard. You can accumulate wealth. You can accumulate possession. But guess what? When death comes, everything disappears. All right, so reason number 1, life is pointless because life is profitless. Reason number 2, life is pointless because it is problematic. Kohelet, when he observes the world, he finds that the world is problematic. Why? He uses 4 things to try to find meaning in life. Number 1, human wisdom. Remember what I told you? Wisdom is very important because wisdom is the ability to do the right thing at the right time. So Kohelet says, yes, wisdom is important, but wisdom is limited in the value. Wisdom is inadequate. Wisdom sometimes may not work very well. Example, you can have all the wisdom in the world, but you cannot solve a lot of mysteries by using human wisdom. Number 2, human wealth. Do you know what he says about wealth? It's going to surprise you. Money. He says, money is, or rather, let's put it there, money talks. When you have money, it's the answer for everything. He's right, correct? When you have money, you can do good things, all right, for good causes. Finance this, finance that, and help other people. All right, so that is the good thing. But with money, you can also do bad things. Money laundering, using money to bribe people, getting out of a difficult situation by using money. So he acknowledges that money talks. It's good to have money now. All of us would love to have money, correct? Money talks. But he also says what? He who loves wealth will never be satisfied. He who likes money will never be satisfied about his income. Whenever we talk about money, we always ask one question: how much is enough? And what is the answer? What is the answer? A little bit more. A little bit more. Think about it. Which means that human beings, we are never satisfied. So he says, with human wealth, you cannot find meaning in life. Third, he says, human work. And he gives an illustration. The illustration is this: when a man works very hard, he accumulates a lot of wealth. But guess what? When he dies, he gives that wealth to somebody who may be undeserved. And worse, might misuse the money. And therefore, he says, human work is meaningless. Do you know the man by the name of Warren Buffett? How many of you know? Okay, a few of you. Famous industrialist, investor, a man, the 7th richest man in the world, whose net value is worth 103 billion. He, and along with other philanthropists, all right, something unusual, they have decided that when they die, they will not give one single cent to their children. Now, if I was his son, I would say, Dad, so sad, too bad. Correct? But if you're an outsider, you may be smiling because it means everybody starts equal. And the idea of not giving wealth to the children is that they must work for it rather than just give to them. And Koheleth, he found out that work at the end of it is meaningless. Fourth, human experiment. So Koheleth, in order to find the meaning in life, decided to put on the persona of King Solomon, the wisest, the richest, the king that has everything, and even 700 wives and 300 concubines. And at the end of it, he comes to the conclusion. And the conclusion is this: even a man like King Solomon, who had everything, in the end, did not find fulfillment in life, did not find meaning in life. And his point is simple. If Solomon, who had everything, could not find meaning in life, you and I, who might have nothing, we are in a worse position. Whenever I think of King Solomon, I think of the two stories I like, of a Sunday school teacher who asked the students a question: how many wives and concubines did Solomon have? And one little boy puts up his hand excitedly. I know the answer. So the teacher says, what is your answer? And he replies, Solomon had 700 wives and 300 porcupines. Think about it. Well, maybe biblically wrong, but I think he's right. Huh? Porcupines. And then another question the teacher was asking the student, telling the student, the wisest man in the world has to be King Solomon. And one little girl, shyly puts up her hand and said, teacher, I disagree. So the teacher was shocked. Why? And so the girl answered, Solomon was not the wisest man because he had 700 mothers-in-laws. Think about it. All right? Think about it. The thing about Solomon, I want to remind us, is a great tragedy. He began very well. He continued poorly. And he ended badly. So much so to the extent that he built altars for his wives to worship all the other foreign gods like Chemosh, Molech. And worse, he not only built for them, he joined them to worship the false gods. And so the life of Solomon teaches us one important lesson. Just because you begin well, there is no guarantee you will end well. Let me repeat. Just because you begin very well in your Christian life, there is no guarantee you will end well. And this is something that Koheleth agrees. In life, there is no guarantee. All right? So, life is pointless because it's profitless, because it is problematic. And finally, life is pointless because it is perplexing. When he looks at life, he comes to the conclusion that life is full of inconsistencies, incongruities, and even, things that should not happen. And so, he looks at the world, it doesn't actually make sense. Why? He sees inequality. He sees suffering. He sees injustice. Isn't that what we see in today's world? By the way, Koheleth points out the problem. He does not give us the answer. All right? And today we see that. Take, for example, he says, Why do wicked prosper and the righteous suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people? Why are the wicked not punished immediately? So all these things lead him to say, life is meaningless. Not only did he observe that life is full of incongruities, inconsistencies, he also observed another thing, that the works and the ways of God are mysterious, that they are unfathomable, incomprehensible, inscrutable. And so this is what leads him to the conclusion, life is meaningless. Question: if life is meaningless, since life is meaningless, can we still live a life that truly matters? And that's what I'm going to deal. And so let's look at the recommendations by the world and by Kohelet. Let's start with the world. When we talk about life, there are two extremes. First extreme is that live a wanton life. Correct? If life is meaningless, come on, let's party all the time. Let's indulge in sex. Let's have a wonderful time. Let's do everything. It doesn't matter because life is meaningless. There was a movement that is something but not exactly the same. Do you remember in the 90s, those of you who are Merdeka generation as well as Pioneer generation, do you remember in the late 1970s, when you enter into a post office, what do you see? You will see the picture of a person with long hair. You remember? Long hair. And why do they put the picture? Because all long hair people are banned. During those times, interesting. And this movement, which we call the hippie movement, remember? The hippie movement. And you characterize them by they're wearing jeans, they all have long hair, and then they have beads, and then they indulge in sex, and they take drugs in order to bring them to another level. Correct? That's what they do. Talking about long hair, I recall the story of this young man. He turned 18, and then he approaches his father. Dad, it's time I have a car. And so the father says, all right, son, I make a deal with you. If you cut your hair short, I will give you the car. And so next week came, and the son went to the father again. And then the father said, son, have you cut your hair? Obviously he didn't. And finally, after 1 month, the son got very frustrated. He rushed into his father's office and then says, Dad, I don't understand. What is your problem with my long hair? Do you know Jesus Christ had long hair? And the father looked at him. Yes. And he also walked. Y'all didn't get it. All right, never mind. So that is one extreme. Another extreme, I am sorry to say, is the way people deal with meaningless in life. Since life is meaningless, what do? Commit suicide. And I'm sorry to say, the rate of suicide is going up and up. All right? Let's look at the Singapore context. Let's just put other countries aside. Let's see Singapore. Look with me at the PowerPoint. Number 1, suicide is the leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 29. Wow! Isn't it shocking? These young people have not even experienced life, already find life meaningless. Commit suicide. 2, there are 5 times more deaths from suicide than transport accidents in 2020. 452 lives were lost to suicide in 2020. 13% increase compared to 400 cases in 2019. This is the highest since 2012. Suicide death rose to 8.8 per 100,000 Singapore residents up by 0.88 as compared to 2019. Males account, now this is shocking, males account for more than 70% of all suicides. You would have thought that those who commit suicide are women, but you are wrong. Statistics tell us men committing suicide, and for every suicide, at least 6 suicide survivors are left behind. So, Shalom Baptist Church, you have reason to exist. You exist to spread the gospel. At the same time, you exist to give hope to all these people. All right? So, that is another way of dealing with this. And of course, that is not the right way and the best way. So let's come to the recommendation of Kohelet. Interestingly enough, Kohelet, the writer, gives us several recommendations, suggestions, admonitions, how we live our lives that truly matter. This morning, I will only highlight 2. Number 1, he says what? Make the best of each day. In other words, whatever situation you are in, make the best. And this is what he says. When times are good, rejoice in the good. When times are bad, think about it, that God makes the former and the latter. There is a Latin idiom that you will find quoted in most of the commentaries. And the idiom is this, which I'm sure you must have heard. Carpe diem, which means seize the moment. Seize the moment. Make the best. Don't complain. Don't blame other people. But make the best of the situation you are in your life each day. Why? So, implication. So how? How do we make the best of each day? I can think of 3 ways. Number 1, all right? Number 1 is that when you are in such a situation, the best thing is do not live in yesterday, because yesterday is irrecoverable. Do not live in the future, because the future is uncertain, but live today. Today is what you have. So that's one implication. Implication number 2, when life gives you a lemon, make it into lemonade. Make the best, all right? And that's what he means. And so, the first thing Kohelet says, to make your life truly matters, make the best of each day. Second, to live a life that truly matters in the midst of meaningless, be willing to take risk. Interesting, isn't it? And he says, the person who waits for the weather and the wind to be perfect will never plant anything or harvest anything. It's very surprising, correct? That Kohelet says, that is how we live your life that will truly matter. Let's take the Singapore context. Parents, I'm addressing parents. Am I correct to say that when you choose a school for your children, you will always go for the established, well-known schools, correct? You will never choose a school that just came out or unheard of, unless you have no choice. University students, when you decide to enter uni, am I correct to say that you choose courses that you think, will bring you money, courses that people are very popular, like law, like medicine, accountancy. But you know what Kohelet says? Don't. Be willing to take risks. Now, it's important. When Kohelet says be willing to take risks, he is not saying taking reckless risks. No. He's thinking or saying take calculated risk. What does calculated risk mean? Before you take a risk, pray, ask for wisdom, talk to people. That is how we live our life. And when we take risks, what are the benefits? According to Kohelet, when you take risks, you may succeed or you may fail. Kohelet never says that when you take risks, you will definitely succeed. No. He says, you do not know. You take risks, you succeed, wonderful. If you fail, it's okay. Because failure can be a good teacher for you. And from failure, you can learn how not to do things the way you do. So that is Kohelet's advice, recommendation to all of us. Next slide. Okay, this was original money. Next. All right. Who is this man? Now, if you do not know who he is, you must be from a different planet. Of course, I think everybody knows the name Steve Jobs, who is associated with what? Apple products. Apple products. Steve Jobs is one of my heroes. Okay? But Jesus is the hero of heroes. He is one of my heroes. A great inventor, but also very eccentric. Why? Do you know? Every morning when he goes to office, he will park in the handicap section. And until today, nobody knows why in the world would he park in a handicap. Now, he could have any car park he wants, but every day when he goes to work, he will park in the handicap. Eccentric. Another thing about him, his clothing is standard. T-shirt, jeans, and a pair of sandals. You look at him. When you are when you give a speech at graduation, protocol requires you to wear a 3-piece suit or 2-piece suit. Do you know, at that graduation ceremony, he wore a T-shirt and jeans and even sandals. Well, that is Steve Jobs. Who dares to say? So anyway, in 2005, he gave a very powerful, persuasive speech. And he simply says, this morning, I want to tell you 3 stories. Story number 1, connecting the dots. Story number 2, about love and loss. And finally, death. And anyway, but by the way, if I were to be teaching in a uni, I will see that no student graduate without first listening to his speech. So anyway, in his conclusion, he quoted 4 words, which he took from a magazine he subscribed to. And what are the 4 words? Stay hungry, stay foolish. Stay hungry, stay foolish. What does it mean? It simply means this. Get out of your comfort zone. Be willing to learn. Be willing to try anything by taking risks. A few thousand years ago, before Steve Jobs quoted this saying, Kohelet already said it. And the way he says is what? Be willing to take calculated risk. So, what is the takeaway for today? The takeaway for today, for you on site and online, is this. Even though life under the sun is havel, meaningless, even though life is pointless because it is profitless it is problematic, it is perplexing, you and I can still live a life that truly matters. How? Two ways. Number one, make each day count. Make each day count. Make the best of each day. Number two, be willing to take risk in your life.